Sometimes I feel like friendship is totally underrated and overshadowed and dismissed, but sometimes I think it might be the single most important thing in my entire life. Welcome back to the 50/50 Project, where every week I talk through an item on a list made up of one thing I've learned for each year I have lived. So this week we're kicking off the love category, and this category could also have been called the friendship category, because most of what I feel really solid on, what I feel really confident in, what I think is the most important in terms of what I know deep in my bones about love, has actually come to me through my friendships most of the time. So I have a lot to say about friendship and about how rich and dazzling and undeserved my blessings have been in that particular corner of my life. But I feel like I want to start by defending the category just a little bit, because I feel like we're conditioned to see friendship as sort of a prop to things like romantic love or marriage or family. And I'm not here to question the beauty or importance of any of those other things, but I will say that I think our culture devalues and teaches us to discount and deprioritize friendship. And maybe to think of it as something once removed from quote unquote love, meaning from romantic love or familial love. And I think that's a mistake, that hierarchical ranking, that devaluation of friendship. And that's why I'm labeling this category as love. It's a statement I'm making here. With thing number 19, marvel at the miracle of friendship. And I think it is sort of miraculous and marvelous. And I'll tell you why. It's because I think there's an element of choice that's sort of encoded into friendship that makes it unique, arguably, and in some ways even more magical than some of the other kinds of primary relationships. I mean, if you think of family, well, you get very little choice about that in terms of its inception. I suppose it's true that you can have the agency to opt out of being an active participant in your family if you really want to, but I think that's a pretty rare and really wrenching thing. And romantic connections are, ideally elective. Most of us, I think, most of the time, choose who we're going to enter into in terms of these kinds of relationships and how long we'll stick it out. But while we're in them, we also tend to build up all kinds of containment structures around romantic relationships and particularly marriage that really encourage us to stay once we're in. Not a bad thing, just an observation. Maybe you have kids, and so your romance also becomes a family structure. Maybe you jointly hold property and assets. Maybe you share a name and a logistical or operational ecosystem, so to speak. And that's not to say that most people who stay in their marriages are only doing it because it's such a hassle to get out. Most of the married people I know remain married because they really, really very much want to be. But my point is that friendship seems to me to be a little different, a little special, in part because it feels like a comparatively easy bond to break if you really want to at any stage of the relationship. Maybe not emotionally, but at least, functionally. You don't have to divorce a friend or move your stuff across town after you dissolve your ties. Most of the time, you won't have to stop going to your family reunion over it or negotiate custody of a child because you opted out of a friendship. And so, because it's easier to go, I think it's especially beautiful when we decide to stay in these friendships. And when two people, or a small group of them, freely take on all the necessary steps to maintain a friendship over years or decades, that's extraordinary in itself, in a way. In a world that is so overscheduled and overburdened, if we have people who are choosing to do the work to maintain a completely optional connection to us, that's almost kind of a miracle. And my point is, we'd do well to marvel at it a little bit more than we currently do, I think. I would argue that I have the best friend on the entire planet. And I also have people from almost every stage and place in my life who I remain closely connected to. And I consider these people and these relationships probably to be the greatest gifts I have ever been given in my entire life. Time and again, I have watched a person who owes me nothing, nothing by blood, nothing under social convention, just show up for me over and over. They've given me their time, their effort, in some particularly desperate moments, their money, their support, and their love, in ways that always have matched and actually almost always have transcended the efforts of the other people in the supposedly more vital categories of connection in my life. And when that happens to you, when people who owe you nothing give you everything, I think it changes you. I think it has made me, of course, reciprocally loyal to these specific people, but also I think it's made me want to live in the wider world in a different and more benevolent way than I otherwise would. It has made me want to be the person who shows up, not because I have to, but because I choose to and I want to. I read an excerpt from a book a couple of years ago, a book called Platonic by a researcher whose name is Marisa Franco. And she pointed out that we often wrap friendship in some really diminishing language. Like, we'll describe somebody as, quote, just a friend if we want to signal that we aren't romantically involved with them or maybe related to them. Or we might say, we don't have to be just friends to someone we might actually want to date, suggesting that friendship is a kind of inchoate and preliminary thing, and if you're really lucky, you'll be able to upgrade it, to fluff it up into something more important or something more socially significant. But Franco seems to make a case, and I say seems because I haven't read the full book, but anyway, she seems to make a case that it would be to our benefit as a society if we would stop doing all that. If we would stop framing our platonic friendships as somehow less than or subservient to our other kinds of bonds. Because friendships and that alchemical experience of being freely chosen by someone who is performing an entirely elective act of commitment year after year in many cases, it's transformative and it's restorative and it's beautiful in its own right and its own way. To bond with someone who owes you nothing and who isn't trying to open a joint checking account with you, that might be about as elevated as it gets, actually. And there's a growing body of research that suggests that friendship plays a huge and very distinct role in quality of life, in lifelong happiness, even in stuff like longevity and health. There have been studies in Sweden not too long ago that showed that having or not having a life partner didn't seem to affect the risk of heart attack or fatal coronary heart disease. But having or not having platonic friends did. Lowered the risk in statistically significant ways, actually. I read about that study in an article in the Washington Post, which also mentioned an Australian study that found that older people with a lot of friends were about 22% less likely to die during the study period than those with few friends. So friendships lowered mortality risks in this way. But interestingly, this study also found that having a social network of relatives did not affect survival rates in the same way or to the same degree. Now, to be clear again, I'm not at all trying to denigrate marriage or family bonds. In fact, I would imagine that we all benefit from embracing as much love as we can in this life and from as many kinds of meaningful, positive relationships as we can possibly cultivate. But I do think it goes to show that there is nothing insignificant or second string about the people with whom we are fiercely and fondly just friends. So what's my point? I guess it's simply to just prize these relationships, to revere them in the ways that we should, and to prioritize them in the context of our crowded, hectic, overstuffed lives. I have learned to build structures around them to support them as they grow, in the same way that marriage puts up structures, in the same way that family comes with structures. 3 of my friends from, 20 plus years ago and I have a monthly catch-up call, and we have had for years. And while 12 calls a year isn't as much as any of us would like, it does keep us immersed in and aware of each other's states of being. Another friend of mine and I have a running text thread in which it's fine to be boring or repetitive as long as each of us engages a couple times a week. And if stuff like that sounds overly choreographed or inorganic or like a kind of social work, I guess it is. But all love is work, and it's worth it. So, schedule a regular call or put a reminder in your calendar to check in. If an annual beach trip with the girls or a hike with your best friend is your shared thing, then I would say fight like hell to make that happen. I've learned that it's really important to protect these connections, to defend them, to invest in them, even when my time is short and my energy is low. When I do this, I am happier and my life just has more meaning. And when I fail to steward my friendships, as sometimes I unfortunately do, I lose important moments. And sometimes even important people. My life, through success and failure as a friend, has taught me how sacred friendships really are, and that part of my work here is to give them their due. Part of my work is to marvel at the miracle of it all. Okay, so I think that's enough for today. I hope you find time to connect with somebody who has been marvelous and miraculous in your life today. Thanks for spending some time with me. I'll be back next week with thing number 20.